One morning, you wake to the sound of roaring, grotesque creatures. These behemoths startle you and are unlike anything you have ever seen before. The destructive path of these monsters stretches for miles behind them, and nothing seems to be getting in their way. Then, without warning, these creatures begin to destroy your neighborhood, slaughtering your neighbors and family for food. This is the experience of the wildlife in our Earth's forests. Animals' homes are devastated every single day due to a process known as deforestation. Deforestation is defined as clearing of the Earth's forests on a massive scale, often resulting in damage to the quality of the land. The Earth's forests are some of the most biodiverse environments we have. However, due to deforestation, 40 football fields of forests are obliterated every single minute. This has transformed the movie Rio, an animated film about the looming extinction of the blue macaws, from a children's movie into a documentary. Today, I'll be talking about what is happening in our own home while most of us are unaware to the reality. The lush, vibrant hues of our island home are some of the most beautiful that our globe has to offer. However, our gross mistreatment of them has caused them to deteriorate and vanish. Because of our home's especially unique nature, this matter requires immediate attention. For those of you who have not had the experience of witnessing Hawaii's environment and unique nature firsthand, there may be some things you are shocked to hear. Hawaii alone harbors an estimated 1/3 of the endangered species in the entire United States, and 90% of its native species are endemic. Additionally, Hawaii has also been titled by the World Wildlife Fund as the endangered species capital of the world due to the fact that 100 plant taxa and over 200 additional species are considered to have 50 or fewer individuals remaining in the wild. When European voyagers first landed on the coast of Hawaii, they brought with them not only novelties and diseases, but their arrival marked the beginning of the destruction of our island's landscapes. They introduced not only metal forks and syphilis, but also numerous invasive species that wreaked havoc on our ecosystem, and this damage continues to persist today. The Nature Conservancy states that these alien animal pests caused the devastating loss of forest and ground cover, resulting in lower groundwater recharge rates, diminished stream flow, and the permanent loss of forests, shrublands, bogs, and other uniquely Hawaiian habitats. The Hawaiian environment was neither equipped nor aided in the imbalance that the presence of these creatures caused. And the destruction of our island's landscapes is occurring while we sit idly by. However, there are some local organizations that are dedicated to combating this alarming and pressing pandemic. The Plant Extinction Prevention Program, or PEP, one such organization, is located at Lion Arboretum in Manoa. Headed by Joan Yoshioka, the program was created as an extension of the Hawaii Rare Plant Program in 2003. Before the creation of PEP, Hawaii was losing 1 endangered species a year. However, thanks to their efforts, they have been able to reduce this number down to 0. Unfortunately, deforestation is a massive issue and cannot be handled by local organizations alone. Beginning our journey to restoring our ecosystem must start with understanding why this complex and important issue is occurring. The most significant cause of global deforestation is by far agricultural expansion. This comes from the principle that the production of goods must be stimulated to the extent that it can account for an increase in population growth and expansion. Manga Bay News, rated by Time magazine as one of the best green websites, states that cattle ranching and large-scale agriculture are major drivers of deforestation in Latin America, whereas palm oil development, intensive agriculture, and pulp and paper plantations are major drivers in Indonesia. Each country has a supply that is in demand heavy enough to justify such severe deforestation. Right here in Hawaii, we have a dire deforestation dilemma. Residential and industrial development are the leading causes of our landscapes disappearing. This means that our need to build and expand upon the land is causing our landscapes to disappear before our very eyes. In ancient Hawaii, there was a strict set of laws and values that dictated not only the grand scheme of their lives, but also the decisions that they made on a daily basis. Among these values were those of kapu and malama aina. The kapu was a regulatory means of protecting the sanctity of the mana in man and in nature, and operated effectively to control the thinking and behavior of the early Hawaiians. It was also used as a conservation measure to protect the overexploitation of the natural resources. Perhaps the greatest example of this is when King Kamehameha I placed a kapu on the sandalwood. This occurred when traveling businessmen from Europe and North America came to Hawaii seeking to take sandalwood back to their home. This in and of itself was not necessarily a bad thing. However, their desire grew to such an exorbitant amount that the plant's existence began to be notably threatened. Observing this, King Kamehameha I placed a kapu on the sandalwood that prevented any more of the trees from being harvested. Had he not taken these steps, the possible extinction of the plant would surely have become a reality. Not only does this illustrate the societal gravity and importance that kapu held to the early Hawaiians, it also directly implicates the effects that overharvesting, coupled with an irreverence for the land, can have if left unchecked. The position in which Hawaii now finds itself is harrowingly similar to that of the early Hawaiians. In both situations, the authority figure is faced with the task that they must choose between preserving the hereditary culture and home or perpetuating economic gain. While King Kamehameha I chose to preserve the environment and his hereditary home and culture, the current government of Hawaii is allowing travel corporations and companies to molest the land simply for the projected lucrative monetary gains that they can derive from such pursuits. In doing so, they are aiding in the erasure of history, culture, environmental diversity, and that which defines the islands. So, as tourism follows sugar, pineapple, and the military, they all comprise a chronology of reincarnations of politically westernized land stewardship systems that alienated many Native Hawaiians from their most fundamental cultural need, access to the land. Losing the most fundamental Hawaiian cultural necessity would mean only one thing. It would cause the exponential loss of forests, and there would be no reason to halt the unfettered destruction of the land. Another keystone value of Hawaiian culture is that of malama. Malama is traditionally defined as caring, and one of the key tenets of malama with respect to the land, or malama aina, is the idea that one only takes what is needed. This is perhaps the most countercultural principle to today's society. Society teaches us that to live in excess is to live happily. To live comfortably necessitates and is only possible through living in lavish exorbitance. However, the early Hawaiians believed not only that living in excess was unnecessary, but in fact simply wrong. They believed that living in excess would lead to the destruction of our landscapes and the ruination of mankind. A Hawaiian proverb expresses this as Hahai no ku'ua i ka Ululaau, or rain always follows the forest. This means that rains are attracted to forest trees, and knowing this, the Hawaiians only felled the trees that were needed. It was their strict adherence to their morals and values that allowed the land to be preserved to the extent and quality that it was. Much like kapu preserved the sandalwood, malama aina saved both the koa and ohia trees. When traveling businessmen once again began to seek the sale of koa and ohia to be commercialized, the Native Hawaiians took it upon themselves to mitigate the reaping of these products and preserved their existence. The proper stewardship of the land by the early Hawaiians is what saved the land from complete annihilation. Just as the Hawaiians feel a spiritual and religious connection to the land, we as Christians hold an important role in the stewardship of our earth. Part of our role as Christians and children of God is to effectively steward the land given to us by our Father. Genesis 2:15 states that the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. God's intention with creating us was not only that we would praise and worship him, but also that we would act as caretakers over his creation and care for it well. As humans, we were put in charge of and given dominion over all of creation, that we may honor and glorify him by being dutiful in maintaining all that he has made. In failing to do so, we are failing to do one of the most primordial tasks handed down to us by our Creator. If religious motivation and cultural preservation were not enough reason to compel action to be taken, another facet of harmful effects of deforestation is the secondary damage that it causes to the environment. While H3, probably the nation's longest running highway dispute, is the most controversial highway project in recent years, it is unlikely to be the last proposed highway or road to severely impact native ecosystems. Pressures to develop and improve transportation are inevitable as population growth and urbanization continue. As the pressure to develop increases, the threat to our island will become drastically more severe and will reach a point that will cause the islands to become unrecognizable from what they once were. Watersheds and forests are the very foundation of our lives in these islands, said David Ige in a statement. The Legacy Land Conservation Program managed to leverage more than $13 million in matching funding from federal and private partners to make this purchase possible. The Legacy Land Conservation Program purchased this land because they intend to use it to restore forests, safeguard naturally occurring sources of fresh water, and improve the habitats of native species. Watersheds are the main source of fresh water for the islands, and they ought to be protected if simply because we need fresh water to survive. Now, the facts that I have presented thus far may give the impression that deforestation is totally and completely wrong and brings about no benefits. However, while in the end I will prove that deforestation is immensely detrimental, there are some benefits. 2017 saw Hawaii rank 2.2% higher than the nation in terms of per capita personal income. Additionally, Hawaii was also ranked as a state with the highest rate of multi-generational households and ranked 7th in terms of old age dependency ratio. What this means is that Hawaii is the state with the highest rate of at least 3 generations per household. Were modernization to run its course in Hawaii, an innumerable more amount of houses and job opportunities would flood the market as job opportunities would open up in the construction, tourism, and hospitality industries. While this would spur the number of multi-generational households to decrease due to the increase in financial stability, it would cause the immensely lucrative tourism industry to become the keystone of our Hawaiian economy. Our breathtaking landscapes have cemented Hawaii as a tourism destination for those seeking to experience paradise. Mark Twain, considered the father of American literature, remarked, "I can see its garlanded crags, its sleeping cascades, its plumy palms drowsing by the shores. Its remote summits floating like islands above the cloud racks. I can hear the splash of its brooks. I can feel the spirit of its wildland solitudes, and in my nostrils still lives the breath of flowers that perished 20 years ago." Twain is just one of many renowned figures to describe sense-evoking imagery of the islands, and this, among other causes, has incited Hawaii to become a tourism hotspot. As such, the largest industry in the Aloha State is tourism. Tourism began when faster and more predictable steamships replaced sailing vessels in trans-Pacific travel. Governments, international, national, and local, were influential in shaping the way that Hawaii tourism developed, from local government subsidies, steamship companies, local funding for tourism promotion, and America's protective legislation on domestic shipping. Hawaii also reaped a windfall from its position at the crossroads of the major trade routes in the Pacific region. According to a report released by Governor David Ige in May of 2018, visitors to the Hawaiian Islands spent a total of $1.42 billion in the month of May, an increase of 11% compared to last year, according to preliminary statistics released by the HTA, or Hawaii Tourism Authority. This means that in the single month of May of last year, the Hawaiian economy gained $1.42 billion simply from what tourists were spending. This does not even account for the tourism revenue tax, which Ige said totaled to be about an additional $890 million. This means that in a single month last year, tourism contributed over $2 billion to the Hawaiian economy. If this number were used to calculate the yearly income of the tourism industry, that number would be $24 billion. $24 billion. Just to put this in perspective, this is the same number as the GDP, or gross domestic output, of the entire country of Ecuador. There's no denying that tourism is an immensely lucrative industry that is providing Hawaii with the opportunity to thrive. Not only does it provide valuable income to the economy, it also supports numerous jobs. In 2017, tourism supported over 200,000 jobs alone. If we were to increase the number of hotels and other tourism-based commodities, there would be an exponential swell in the job opportunities and income to the economy that would boost it greatly. However, these businessmen often do not consider the fact that the intrinsic value that our natural landscapes and forests possess will earn far more than simply destroying them to construct hotels or resorts. When aesthetic value, water quality, climate control, biodiversity, and other forest services were calculated, the total value of the Ululaau forest was estimated at between $7.4 and $14 billion. When examining the benefits and detriments of deforestation purely in terms of projected financial gain, the Ululaau forests alone are worth halting this detrimental process. The Ululaau forests boost tourism, and one examines the combined benefits with all the other forests throughout the islands, any sort of financial gain would be drastically outweighed by the amount of lost value. Not only is deforestation at best economically inadvisable, it also causes secondary damage to the environment. When trees are cut down, there's an immediate release of carbon dioxide, a reduction in carbon dioxide being taken in by the trees and converted to oxygen, and oxygen being released. What this means is that the effects of cutting down trees cannot be taken simply at face value. And while the health of our forests decline, so does their ability to mitigate the harmful effects of heavy rains, which in Hawaii are all too common. When heavy rains occur, sediment, along with the water carrying it, becomes collected by forests and transferred to the forest watersheds. In the watersheds, the sediment is simply filtered out over time and neutralized. However, were that sediment to reach the ocean, it would be extremely damaging to coral reefs and marine life. As the acidity of the ocean increases, the marine environment will become more and more uninhabitable. While being extremely toxic and dangerous to marine life, it would cause the crystal clear waters of Hawaii to become uninviting to both tourists and locals alike. The effects of deforestation on the island are clear to those who are aware of them. The devastation of our land would occur, and the current epicenter of the Hawaiian economy would collapse in the blink of an eye, leaving the state in a self-perpetuated and self-initiated state of economic depression. The islands would no longer be able to be appropriately named paradise because the famed recollections of Twain and countless others would be the only way for individuals to experience paradise. Barren and stripped of its beauty, like a temple stripped of its statues and gold filigree, the land would be left completely unremarkable. Adopting the modern method of urbanization in the way that most businesses would suggest would require Hawaii to lose its especially biodiverse environment. This is a stake far too costly simply for projected lucrative monetary gains. Saving our aina, our sacred home, and our safe haven requires that we must embrace the traditions of ancient Hawaii. King Kamehameha I was willing to sacrifice the immense economic gain of the sandalwood industry in order to preserve his culture and his home. Following in the steps left for us by the early Hawaiians is the clearest path to restoring our ecosystem. Thank you.